Order at 7:05. Approval of the agenda. The motion, anything you want to add or?
No, I don't know who needs to be added formally, but I'll propose it anyway and have discussion. We just had started informally here about the training for open meeting law. And
Yeah,
that can go anywhere. I don't care, just as long as
you want to go,
it gets covered.
want to go on new business or?
Sure.
Because I had that on my list too, to add. The date that's coming up,
Next Wednesday.
Yep.
which is not a good time for me. We'll talk about that.
So what is, I missed what you were saying. What is it? What's next Wednesday?
Open meeting law training
Or,
So this,
any community
oh,
service.
it's going to be available otherwise. The things you have to do is to jump through the hoops to become VLCT registered
Yes.
user.
well, they do that once though, and then after that, you can reuse it. And then,
Yeah.
Can you do it remotely? Yes, it's a Zoom session. Oh, great. And where was it listed? I missed that.
Morgan's email from Monday at about 10:35.
To help my lead math and find things that she beyond. Okay.
Yeah.
Monday from Morgan.
So I've added, Eric added open meeting law. I wrote down law, so you know where my mind is right now. Open meeting law, open meeting law. Okay. So, anything else on the agenda to add, prove as is?
It could be under new business, and, yeah, I think we may have covered the natural resources chapter already.
Which is that what 10 is? Did we skip over to 10? I had in my notes, I had in my notes for chapter 10.
Yes, 10 is flat, this one.
Yes, flood, yeah, that's,
The natural was increased. So I was saying that, some information on the Ashmore, can identify that and watch the video that we shared around. And, impact over long term to, Vermont and Grafton.
Yep. wanna add that in new business? Dashboard update?
Yeah, I think it's worth
Yeah.
a few minutes to discuss. It's gonna be with us for a while.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, along with
has some
Ash, back to
impact to your other job here in the government.
dashboard, and then, well, while we're at it, I was gonna bring up the rain gauges as a potential project for us.
Oh, yeah,
I was
good.
gonna bring that up under new business, so rain gauges.
Engages and river
River
aware.
awareness.
It's all strung together, river aware.
That's the app.
Oh, yeah, okay, right. Okay.
The natural resources is part of chapter 2, historic, cultural, and natural resources. I think we did do.
We did do it.
So I thought we might circle back
Sure.
to that.
We're definitely gonna have to circle back.
Oh, yeah,
This is.
Well, I've got more when we get down to municipal planning grant. I guess some more info and so forth. So let's get back to approving the agenda.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the March minutes. I looked through, they look good. Lester, thank you again. Approval of minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye,
Opposed? And we can jump in on flood chapter, or how do you want to do this? You want to circle back to two, or wanna jump right in on the flood?
No, we can keep going and we
Keep going.
talk about that one item. For inclusion, that's something.
Yeah. Anyone wants to begin? Go ahead, I gotta get online here.
Well, I mean, the first thing is, again, I mean, everything I read in this flood resiliency only sounds even more pertinent to 2025, and I just was wondering if you know, or if we can update any of these numbers, like, to the extent that 26% during the life of a 30-year mortgage had a chance of flooding. There's even words talking about how that's gone up, but also more importantly, in the history of flooding, this ended with Irene. Do we want to include any narrative about anything that's happened in the last 15 years? Is there any floods of note? You guys would be the experts to know that needs to be enhanced.
We've had minor flooding.
Yeah, through summer of 23. We had an issue.
So I'm saying, so I mean, 23 is what I recall. I don't know if that warrants, if that makes it to this list.
I mean, just make note of it, that we've had another event of significant magnitude.
Yeah, it doesn't really rise to the level, well, maybe the other 2003.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah, 2003, those are similar. Magnitude events.
By the way, Ron had notified me that he couldn't make it tonight. Okay, good one. Is there anyone online? No.
I see. I think it would be worth noting, even though it's not directly specific. What has happened in the northern and particularly northeastern part of the state over the past few years, the flooding. The inundation flooding of basically the Winooski River, which has been ongoing but has become worse, and the flash flooding, which has happened 2 years in a row in the Northeast Kingdom, which has been devastating to the people up there. It's just a sign of the times. Well, even though it's not reference specific, it might be worth pointing out that this is occurring in the state. It's an increasing risk that we should be taking into account in what we're doing planning.
Worth noting that it's a widespread issue in Vermont, because
Yeah.
if it's happening throughout Vermont, then resources, for Grafton are certainly gonna be impacted.
Yeah, certainly was true during Irene.
So,
Power companies are stretched, in emergency services. Are dealing with a much bigger problem.
Yeah, and if we were to just mention the increased risk of particularly flash flooding and the dates that had occurred in the Northeast Kingdom, as a sign that this kind of occurrence is something we could be prepared for, or better prepared for. I'm not sure that we are capable of truly being prepared for it.
So in 2023, we can say that July 2023, storms occurring after significant rainfall events
And I think it was in 24 as well, so 2 years in a row. That the NEK has been hammered,
2024, last year?
I think so,
No,
and it was the 2 years previous.
yeah, 23.
Okay, and then 22, because there are 2 years that,
Well, 22 was up Montpelier,
um,
and 23 was down here, south.
well, the flooding that I'm more particularly concerned about is what in the Northeast Kingdom around Linden.
That was 22. They had it down, you're right, they did have 2 years in a row.
2 years in a
Yeah.
row.
Yes, the second year, 23, we had it down here too.
They hadn't even begun to get all of
Yeah.
it cleaned up, and
Yeah,
here they get it again the next year.
No, I think it was 23 and 24. I think the flooding up, you know, the same did.
oh, you're right, it was last year.
Just this summer.
You're right, we were dry down here,
Yes.
we didn't have anything.
We lucked out.
Yeah.
We got drenched the
You're
summer
right.
before.
You're right,
23.
so,
And everyone got flooded up north, and then last summer, everyone got flooded up north again, not
Yeah.
much different.
so it was 23 for us in July, 23 for them up there, and 24 again. Up there was, what was it, maybe, was it earlier in the year?
No.
June, July?
Similar time.
Similar time, July?
Yeah.
It was like a year to the day. The same weekend or something.
Let's go to our Tempest. Did you look up Tempest?
I did.
We could find a date. And get history, this is what I wanna propose. I'll look it up. It's Tempest, it's weather, it's a weather app. And it has a nice history of what's happening and fairly up to date. To that day. I've had rainfall amounts come to me in the afternoon that occurred that morning. As being totaled. So in history, or pick a date, July, I don't know if it'll go back that far. It should. Number 23. How about July? 23.
So it's an app you purchased.
Hmm?
It's an app you purchased.
Yeah, you can jump on anyone's who was on the internet with it. But if you purchase the unit, you can be displaying to others what you're monitoring.
This appears to be an app.
It's an app tied to a weather station that they sell,
Yes.
and then I guess you can crowd share information.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's saying no data available for this date. Here it is. So December 23 is showing. Going back to December 23.
I thought of putting a little weather station up at the house, but haven't done it yet.
So what Eric and I talked about, might as well bring it up in here,
Oh, sure, we can
hash around.
kind of jump ahead and
Yeah,
fill in.
it's a weather station that, in the, when the watersheds going up through Wyndham and out the Valley Road, have these weather stations where there's Wi-Fi, so it might be at someone's house
Yeah.
that's close to the river, like me, for example, I could have one. Go further up in the Wyndham and find whoever's up there,
Someone around Lawrence Four Corners.
Lawrence, Fort Corners would be perfect. Yeah, because that's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And just start there, and maybe a couple along the way, one in Houghtonville. So you have need Wi-Fi for it.
Yeah, but then if you have the app, you can see the progression.
Exactly. Yeah,
What I haven't investigated yet is how frequently the rainfall total
mm,
updates.
Yeah,
if it updates almost in real time, some like every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes,
that would be nice, yeah,
that really becomes, valuable to us.
you know,
Because what we really need is a rate of rainfall sensor. To be placed in all of the upper watersheds coming into Grafton. And that's the rate of rainfall which, produces the out of bank wild, flash flooding that does so much damage in Grafton. In general, we don't have to worry about inundation flooding. There's a minor amount might occur down, in Cambridgeport. Where there's actually a piece of land that's set aside to be a floodplain buffer. Of a fairly significant size, so. Saxon River is all protected by it. But when you think about what's coming down in Wyndham. And then coming down in, a rather, high change in elevation coming into Houghtonville. You develop a lot of velocity. It's velocity of the stream that picks up the sediment and the rocks and the boulders, and erodes the banks. But that's what we have to worry about here, as we don't have much of an impoundment. If you look at what Irene did, if the rivers came out of their banks, but they were fairly, in a fairly, high rate of motion. They were carrying a lot of sediment and not very far from the center line, if you will, of the river. You didn't have much of any consequence at all. And it was over with, in a relatively short period of time. What most of the rest of the country worries about, and what this, the national water model and most of the areas that are, fairly flat land, worry about is inundation flooding, and that comes and stays for days. We don't have that problem. Probably never will. But we do need to be able to, react to and respond, to flash flooding, because there are properties that are close to the stream that, you might want to get people out of in an emergency situation. If you knew, for instance, that in Wyndham you were getting 3 inches an hour of rain coming down, and it's likely to stay there for 2 or 3 hours, you know that slug of water is coming down through, and it's gonna do some damage. Anybody close to the stream is like, man, they're gonna, wanna head for high ground. Maybe we could, interest this group, Tempest in, a new instrument. That is a rainfall gauge,
yeah.
or their product line.
What would be the way to go and avoid having to have NOAA or whoever put it in, because it's gonna take forever to get one,
Right.
and the cost would be astronomical. I think the cost would be pretty low on this.
It conceivably could be, since I think the biggest expense of a deployment like that is going to be, the data processing and getting it out onto the airwaves.
Mhm.
It's already taken care of with these little
You know,
cheap commercial units.
yeah, anybody could be getting on this, fire department, the town crew, town office. Whenever there's an event heading this direction, they can just, okay, let's see what's going on, let's watch the weather. And if they're getting 5 inches of rain up in Lawrence, Fort Connor, you know, we better watch out.
the actual instrument itself. If it were mass produced by this Tempest organization, which, you know, probably has tens of thousands of customers.
Hmm.
It has a market big enough so that you could produce an instrument that's fairly cheap, on the order of, well, let's say more than $50 and less than 100,
Mhm.
somewhere in that vicinity. That would add in right into what they've already purchased for their weather station.
Hmm. I think if we had, like, when we log in, we're logging in on, like, this is the town of Rockingham, this one's at, I think it's fire station in Saxon River. I think, that's what this one is. If you own the app and own the, say, 3 or 4 apps on the way down through, I think that's where you can get in and find out what's occurring immediately.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's how I
Says
did
there's
it,
a weather graphs, you know, website.
because I was on my friends up in Claremont, Claremont Park and Rec, on the Monadnock Field, it was raining. And we were watching it, he was watching it on his phone occur real time,
Oh,
knowing how much rain had fallen, we're about to treat the fields and. Well, we're already up to an inch of rain, so we knew it was gonna be too wet to go across the fields.
mhm.
So it was coming off of his app, his unit in Claremont.
So that's a different level of.
Yeah, so I think when you purchase, yeah, you got membership to that, yeah.
Hmm.
So it could work, what the costs are, you know, again, I think it's gonna be minor. And then that could be in our budget, a town budget, budgeting for
That'd be part of
flood
the
monitoring.
emergency management, or emergency.
Emergency management.
Emergency management plan.
Yeah, so does that, I mean, that can go in our emergency management plan, it can go in right here for, goals.
Mhm. I think that, investigating ways of, monitoring, rate of rainfall. Into the, into the toolkit, if you will, of emergency management.
Good use of readily available cheap technology.
Whatever. One way or another.
I wanna add that in under recommendations for action, maybe?
Yeah. It would be nice if we could get the river gauge back working in Saxon River. Those are
But how,
the-
how does that help us here?
That would give you some sort of tie into history. There's a history of river levels and associated events with that. Until they abandoned it a couple of years ago, it was continuous. I think that's the USGS that actually operates it. I don't think it's NOAA particularly, I think it's the USGS operation.
Yep.
And then we've got the abandonment of the more general weather station up here in DeRoche's Field. I don't know why that happened. I do remember when Irene came through, that they hadn't serviced it, so we didn't know what the rainfall was here. That was irksome.
Is anyone investigating? Who operated that one? Was that USGS?
I think that was actually NOAA.
Hmm.
Albany,
Unless they found another location that we don't know about.
or abandoned.
Yeah,
I know there's a station on Stratton.
We need more gauging. We've got a more active climate situation. We have to pay more attention to this stuff. Not something we can be casually involved in it. We have to be actively looking at it.
Mhm.
no, it was one of those agencies that just got a pretty dramatic budget cut.
Oh, they're being hollowed out, yeah. So far, they're still producing weather forecasts and radar operations out of both Albany and Burlington, so those are the ones that service us, but I don't know if the one depth. they're able to provide services now. Moving target.
Yeah. I just made a note, recommendations for action. Investigate that app further, and maybe there's something else out there that we're not aware of, but I like this one in particular, because it's made me get on this one, and there's one in Keene I use, and then the one in Claremont, so it covers a triangle for me.
Well, if you're writing down things, we need to be doing more investigation, and then that river aware operation is also one that could stand to be looked at seriously.
I'm not familiar with that one.
You didn't try downloading it or anything?
Oh, you told me, did you tell me about it in our emails?
Yeah,
I
it's,
think yeah, I've got
it's a cell phone app, made by an engineering group, I think in Bristol, somewhere on the White River watershed. And the originators of it were people that experienced Irene and wondered what they could do.
Yeah. Okay, did. Look that up. It's a phone app, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's capable of sending out alerts to you when there's something going on in the watershed that you're concerned about. Problem, I think, is that they're depending upon sensor inputs that don't exist down here on these rivers, such as the stream gauge, like was the one that got abandoned in Saxon's River. Now, whether they're tied in with this tempest or could be, don't know.
Okay. Aware and prepare, Indian River, that's not in Florida. River app, Rivercast. They're all talking river level, Rivercast is talking river levels. River Aware is not showing up.
It is available off the App Store. Doesn't have much for homepage right here.
Is that's Apple?
Yeah, this is Apple.
Oh,
The group is called Transcend Engineering.
well, if we don't have anything monitoring Saxon River, it's not gonna help us out.
Unless it can tap into Tempest. And it also
Oh, for rainfall totals, yeah.
and it also has some degree of data processing that I don't think anybody else has put together.
This one that's Rivercast is actually giving you river levels, probably according to
Stream gauges.
stream gauges, yeah. Well, it's got river levels and forecasts for the USA.
I'll read you what it says here in the About Us page. Transcend Engineering is a dedicated group of scientists and engineers who solve complex problems that are important to society. We created River Aware to help keep you, ordinary citizens, first responders, public officials, everyone aware of changing river conditions. both in your community and where others may be threatened by extreme weather. While we have contributors from coast to coast who are based in Vermont, where we know firsthand the harm that sudden rapid flooding can bring to people's lives and livelihoods. We are driven by the collective mission to serve our communities by sharing accurate, accessible data. Our pledge to you is that we will continue to work on bringing innovative and intuitive features of what we believe is already the most usable app available for keeping an eye on river conditions and learning about hydrology in the process. We can only continue this important work in years forward. So please consider subscribing to the premium level of service. Haven't done that yet, but this is promising. They've attacked a problem that is really important to us in Vermont.
Mhm. There's another one called Riffle. River levels and weather. You know, fishermen and kayakers are gonna look for the white water.
So that's an Android phone,
Yeah, that's probably why it's not.
and you've looked in the apps available and it's
Yep.
not there.
Yep.
That's
I'm getting,
bummer.
It'd be interesting if other towns are looking at similar options.
What about other towns?
So they're looking at similar options to leverage technology on rainfall totals.
Well, how's, NOAA doing it now? They've got their weather stations and reporters throughout that column. I know AccuWeather, a friend of mine, well, kid who worked for me, works for AccuWeather, and said they're always looking for people to send in, connect with current weather from their weather stations.
Hmm.
So maybe that's something to do, go right through.
Wherever the data can come from. I think the River Aware does not have its own sensor network, so it's looking to pull from where it can.
So in our case, we need to get sensors installed.
I think so. I think
Yeah, that's
it
gonna
would be worth our while.
Yeah.
To have a few sensors in key locations to help protect us.
be,
So worthy use of our finances.
it's a Riverwalk game on that one. So getting back to the chapter. Um. History and. Regions of vulnerability. We talked about this when we were in that. NOAA. Discussion, and Saxon or this company, we both agreed that. Need to locate. That's areas that get flooded, but where are the erosion? Areas, where are things gonna slide, where is it most, where the river meets an embankment.
As opposed to a ledge.
Yes,
That's.
and can we look into further protecting those areas? With riprap?
We could. The Meredith down in this. If you're,
What they don't know won't hurt them.
they still allow it where you're protecting public infrastructure,
Yeah,
but if you're
well,
protecting.
you can make the argument that, look what Irene did with some of these areas.
Oh, yeah,
Cause further problem. Make the argument that, no, we're protecting our village.
Yeah, and they'll buy that. But they won't buy, protecting, private residences. Or farm fields. If you got a road there, they'll allow you to rip rap, protect that. You got a public building, they'll allow you to rip rap, protect that.
you know,
We got a road, pretty much all the way along, sucks there.
Yeah,
And perhaps.
yeah.
So if they'll let you do it, protect the road, then I think a lot of that would be covered.
You're true.
Same for
That's
Fisher
right.
Hill Road. Except where you turn on, you know, most of that, the bottom is right by the brook.
well, both Fisher Hill and, well, and Middletown, those become rivers themselves, so.
It actually lists in here, and I think it's actually fairly accurate, the parts of 121, the other roads. Areas of specific concern.
Yeah,
Other areas, again, same sort of thinking, is there anything else that has happened over the last 5, 7 years since the last plan, the town plan that we want to draw attention to another dangerous area? Anything listed here?
We did have flooding, on the top of Fisher Hill, which is relatively unusual because the beaver dam went right in that last 23 storm.
I thought someone let it go.
I don't think so. It was the rain that happened when all the rain was happening.
Yeah.
And it came down through and went over the road, for several hours. Because the water was good.
A couple of months ago, someone told
I
us.
was working, and I was like, I thought a truck was going by, where suddenly there was all this noise.
Wow.
And, I looked, I could see it from my living room when I looked down. It was very hot. And then, down toward my sister's, Cheryl Miller, between her and David, where over the.
and did it take the road out then?
Not too badly, amazingly, I think it's pretty wide at that point. So it ran over about 1.5 feet deep, but very wide,
Yeah,
so it didn't seem to have a lot of force. So it eroded a little, but it didn't take the road away.
and it had a lot of trees and brush go through before it got there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That takes some energy.
Although it's part of the farm, we used to call it prairie. I don't know why, we just always did. It's kind of wide and flat right there, so it, at least before it gets to the road, it kind of dispersed a little bit.
Yeah.
But then, after the road, it closes right up.
Yeah. It probably eroded a good deal right down.
But it is the opposite of, the Kenyon's old house, they kept putting riprap, which kept that from washing away. Because the road's pretty high up on the bank at that moment. So that was effective. Otherwise, I think the road might have gone up there.
A couple of years ago, we had engineers come through and they were doing some markings or remeasuring crossings, bridges and other things.
Yeah,
Where did that information ever wind up?
that was survey done for the National Flood Insurance Program, I think. Don't know that it ever went beyond there, and it's the surveying work that Bill has warned us that when they say they're gonna have a public hearing on it for the maps, we have to jump right on top of and make sure we participate. Don't know exactly when that might happen, but we don't want to be left out of the process because we know that the new maps have got some serious issues with them. He keeps on talking about the Hinkley Brook being located on the other side of the road from him on the bank to
Yeah.
the south.
Didn't that get corrected? I think you mentioned something about that, did it get corrected?
Maybe the last time around, I don't know.
Yeah,
But, more to the point, earlier than that. And I think it might even be mentioned in here. We had a study done by Fitzgerald.
Yep, mentions it here,
And
2015-16.
And they did these, what I would call preliminary work for assessing the fluvial erosion hazard, that's flash flooding hazard on the river. It needs to be followed up, but I don't know when we're gonna be able to do that, and it's one of those things where you're gonna have to carve out maybe between $7,000 and $10,000 for another carry on from that study to do a more accurate flash flooding assessment. That's where you're talking about being able to identify particular points on the river that might be really vulnerable to flash flooding.
Mm. Did we do our own assessment with hiring someone with a drone? In the springtime or in the fall? The leaves are off the trees,
Well, I
fly the
had
rivers and do a mapping.
high hopes that the LiDAR mapping that was done would be a sufficient accuracy to give us a good handle on elevations. They don't really tell you what the soil types are at all.
Mm. Assume they're mostly the same along the river.
Well, that's what A&R has done, and where I have a big problem with them because their river corridor is just a broad brush stripe down either side of the river. And it doesn't matter whether it's a gravel bank or a ledge. So if we can get that better defined, maybe we could actually get them to amend their river corridor. In the meanwhile, we're having to deal with it as it is.
Right. So would Wyndham Regional be on our site again? Actually, I say again, because they accepted how we presented it in the town plan.
I don't know, that's one of the things that I wanted to mention in this chapter. We have to at least appease the existing legislation relative to river corridors. In order for the Wyndham Foundation, the Wyndham Regional Commission to sign off on it.
Mhm.
That is where engaging this, what is his name? It's the one who gave us the outline last fall of the legislation and how we need.
Oh, what's his name, John?
No. Eric John retired. And then he's died.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Guess he can't make it then.
Right. His name that come to me.
I think,
I wanna say his first name is Matthew.
oh, it's not, the same Matthew here, is it?
You guys are connected up.
Bachelor?
Maybe.
Because
Butler?
Bachelor, Bachler.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, he's gonna come to our next meeting.
Good.
How much that? Again. I want to mention it now,
At your invitation or his,
my invitation,
good,
I messaged him about the municipal grant, we talked about it, we go to municipal grant, how's that?
okay,
As soon as you said Matthew, but I think that's the guy who came to see us last time,
and,
and talk about the legislation and.
yeah, we need to tag him. For being the staff assistant. We're doing the upgrade here.
Yep, he's coming to meet us on the 13th of May. And I told him everything that we're doing, and he said, yeah, perfect. And he's also gonna help us with the grant. Which the next one is November 1st deadline. We missed the March 31st one. But we were talking about doing the fall one anyway, right, for next year?
Yeah, and which was, oh, that may have been the one we just missed, that has to have everything in by the end of September.
They wanted everything by the 30th. Well, they wanted the application by the 31st, and it needed to be approved by your select board. We had no time to do that. I think we talked about that last meeting.
So his visit here will be on the dime of WRC,
Mhm.
but we can
Yeah,
kind of.
no, it's,
Looking for-
he says we're required by WRC to have at least 2 visits from them within an 8-year period. We were on his list anyway.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, there's our next meeting, can you come? And he said. Yeah, well, I thank you for the information he sent me, and then he said, yes, please put me down for attending on the 13th, 7 p.m. We can talk about planning commission's questions and concerns for the town plan update. And it should be a good opportunity to start framing the grant application for the next round. So we can kill 2 birds.
Good.
With him, I'm pretty sure that's the same.
Yeah, yeah. He's the one that WRC has recognized as being their point person for dealing with the new legislation that came out last year and how member towns have to
Mhm.
adopt to it and adapt to it. And in this particular chapter, I think we may need to make some modifications to what we say about river corridors. I hope we don't have to make a formal adoption of them. Yeah. That's a bridge I don't want to cross yet. Not until they actually put science behind their map designation of the corridor.
Yeah, well, we can argue that with them. And
Yeah.
it's a good argument, it's fact.
Yeah.
Relax. We suggest, let's see, yeah, we wanted to ask when the regional when data should and will be updated, so he should be able to give us all that. Right?
Yeah.
Next week, next month,
Maybe.
or ask him when that will be available, so we can start putting the chapters together.
At some point, we have to pony up some money, I think, to get him on board as the consultant to help us through the town plan revision.
And that's what's puzzling me is the whole grant. thing. Aren't they working for us anyway? Why should we have to pay them to come in?
Oh, you have to look at the pay stream. We pay the WRC every year on the basis of our population, certain amount, that basically. When keep the lights on down there, it really doesn't pay for the people. The people have to be paid by a segment, vanishingly small of the property transfer tax in the state of Vermont. And any other grant that they can pull in there, so they're operating a little bit like a lawyer's office, well. They don't have a steady stream of money coming from any public institution other than the Agency of Commerce and something or other development, which doles out what little is left of the property transfer tax. So they're really starved down there all the time and in order to run their operation, they have to bring in grants, federal, state, or wherever they.
Because they're getting percentage of the grant to operate. And so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But they're a state.
Quasi-state, yeah.
Quasi state, okay. It's not like they're not a 501c3 nonprofit
No,
or anything like that, they're part
No.
of, they are employed by the state.
Yeah.
We don't
So,
like quasi, how so?
well, if you were entirely state, you'd be entirely state funded.
Okay,
These people have to go out and beat the
Somebody-
bushes to
okay,
keep themselves afloat.
and they're doing everything from, everything. Housing,
They've shrunken their field of responsibility as of. I don't know, actually, I think a couple of days ago was the effective date. From covering. A lot more topics than they had before now. They've brought everything down to. Well, maybe I should say that they abandoned the Natural Resources Committee. And abandoned, for all intents and purposes, the Energy Committee. And I think another committee as well. They're retaining the Project Review Committee. Which I happen to sit on, which has a responsibility for looking at what is essentially the county level input to Act 250 decisions. Any Act 250 project or proposal goes through WRC Project Review Committee. We get a chance to look at it. That's one of the core committees that are
so project exists, for a town municipal project. Not a private project, or both,
private,
private project,
Act 250.
correct, okay. So, okay. So you are part of the Act 250 process.
Yes. There are a couple other committees that are standing committees. They're in the charter, if you will, of the organization that are still there. But they cut energy, which in the past few years hasn't amounted to that much. But they cut natural resources, which I have great apprehension about that. That's an area where the county,
So you're relying on the state to pick up that slack, and it's taking away some of the control within the county.
I'm not sure that there's anybody at the state level that is doing anything about natural resources concerns at a local level, in any municipal planning sense. They have the agent in natural resources, but they're not down here advising us on our planning for natural resources.
So where do we get that information from in our next plan?
There's data that's available, but I'm talking about, if you're talking about, say, something going on in a watershed somewhere that is gonna affect, water quality or, forestation or whatever, there isn't anything that WRC is gonna have active people looking at
Gotcha.
other than state level, higher altitude looks at the situation.
Mhm.
I think natural resources really should be a part of the representation. Another one that they've undertaken in the past and essentially have abandoned now is emergency management. They've been paying for that, like robbing Peter to pay Paul, never having been funded for it in the first place, taken on the responsibility or helping the towns with it. They'll still have some operational responsibilities for emergencies, but they won't be doing the same planning that they were before. Again, a case where that intermediary sort of county level,
So where'd that funding? Not to get into the weeds here, but where'd that funding go? Why did the state take it away?
emergency management, there was never much of that available at all. I don't know what was funding the Natural Resources Committee.
But yet, we are 11.1% taxed in this state. We're the second highest in this country. Paying taxes. Why are they cutting?
Where are they cutting? I don't know. I'm just saying that I know that WRC has just gone through a
Yeah,
correction.
it's interesting. What do you think, Buzz?
It's hard to say what is gonna be available right now. I think some sources are being,
Well, no, just look back in time. It was just happening before this happened.
yeah,
We're 11.1%. But yet, they've decided to take away this money long ago before even this administration. So,
As
I
I
know
said,
education is up there
yeah.
and,
Well, they do, they have talked about, there are these programs for select board members to represent areas of interest. That they can volunteer on, so that's, you know, and they are recruiting people. To be vocal for their towns, in that organization.
on a volunteer level.
And, well. To represent, select boards for the state to the legislature. And the VLCT kind of coordinates different areas for legislative input. I think the other one is to understand the distribution of funding.
Hmm.
Education would be, I mean, a lot of funding.
That's probably what was just over the top. I mean, New York is 11.2%. Hawaii is 11.8. And everyone else is lower than that throughout the country. So per capita, we're the highest.
Hmm.
Did you know that?
and yet our state university is not up there at all. The way I understand it, it's less supported by the state than other state colleges are.
I think they're relying on their endowments and tuitions, probably, right?
I don't know. I haven't
Are they
paid
still
attention.
big in their sciences and they get to med school up there, right?
They do. For now, that's a real crown jewel.
Hmm.
There are things that I would hope that they might do going forward that really may be necessary with the shutting down of federal resources to do things that we need in a hurry, like medical testing.
Yeah. Well, we segued a little bit, but it all comes down to who's gonna help us and how do we fund it for our own needs here.
I guess one of the good things is I have not heard of any personnel having to be laid off on WRC. But in order for them to be, funded going forward, things like this municipal planning grant, if we contract with them for assistance, staff assistance,
Look at that, yeah,
then their cut is, that's part of their lifeblood.
yeah, so he's gonna come here as a salesperson trying to sell us a grant too, I would think.
The idea, it sort of works both ways. If we get him here to be the staff assistant from WRC to help us with the town plan, it's got a little bit of an investment, personal investment, making sure that whatever the town plan is, that it will pass muster of the WRC for approval.
Mhm.
And I think that that's an advantage.
Mhm.
There've been times in the past when we've had assistance in doing town plan revisions where the planning commission has not been in complete agreement with the staff person that came from WRC. But I'm pretty sure from what I've heard, we've met before. And any of the people that I know down there at WRC now, we should have a pretty cordial relationship.
Mhm. Regarding our mapping or flood mapping, you see some significant change in that? Or is that just gonna
Well,
flow through unless we get the data that we need?
the LiDAR data exists out there. I think the maps around here, one of them is a LiDAR map, might be back on the screen.
Mhm.
That detailed data from the LiDAR exists. The actual ground truth for what exists on the riverbanks does not exist at this point. That's what, I think that's the next step.
Yeah,
If we had both of those together, it's conceivable we could get A&R to cooperate with us and modify their river corridor. That would be nice, because river corridors are apparently becoming much more powerful in the regulation of things now. This last year imposed it on municipalities. That's one of the things we have to look at in here on our chapter. It used to be that it was only where Act 250 applied that the river corridor automatically applied. But now I'm pretty sure that it applies to each municipality regardless of Act 250. It behooves us to try to make enough data available so that the river corridor actually follows science instead of a paintbrush.
you know,
I was just looking at the Vermont Emergency Management site, they do have grants for hazard mitigation funding programs. A lot of that is aimed at property buybacks, but they have done some like, debris racks, they call them, that catch ice coming in. So I think this might be a mitigation grant, opportunity. The rainfall,
Okay.
plus the mapping of the corridors, make sure things are fine.
Yeah,
speaking of ice, did you notice how our ice went out on the Saxon River? It just flushed right out.
I didn't notice.
It went out like in a heartbeat, clean and simple, done. All the ice chunks were gone.
It wasn't very thick this year.
Yeah, last chunks like that.
Yeah.
But ours cleaned out, and then if you went just a little north to the Williams River, it was still frozen over. And it basically just melted, it never, and there wasn't an ice flow up there. To the north,
What
it
is
was
that,
right
is
here,
that because of what, because it's just so much more volume of water?
I don't know what occurred, and we did have. I don't think we had more than 3 inches of rain plus the snow melt. It was on a Sunday night,
Yeah. I wasn't aware if it went out.
yeah, it actually went out on. I wasn't here, but Anita was. And she said, yeah, I just watched all the ice just go right out and river came up, went down. Pretty smooth. And it took out a lot of stuff, took out the wood that was in the river and it took out the tree that was across from Harold Igo's old house. There was a tree laying in there, gone. It's somewhere. I can't find it, I was just looking, see how far it might have gone, it's gone further than the village. Well, it's hung up in the corner back here. But it was just interesting to see that both branches had flushed out, all ice. But yet, up right up the road, Williams River was just still frozen over. Hadn't gone out. And the West River had gone out. It usually goes out anyway. So much water goes into that down through Newfoundland and Palmerston.
I don't know what goes into, whether it's a clean flush or an ice jam. Do recall pretty significant ice jam, and then here one year that tried to take out the covered bridge over here.
Right, it was right on the corner by the footbridge.
Yeah.
It's 2 years ago. And that eventually just melted down. If we'd had any more rain after that, I was gonna take that little footbridge out.
Yeah, but it was starting to get a hill
Yeah,
bridge.
because the footbridge could have crammed underneath the Kidder Hill Bridge.
Yeah, said before, but I think it fell on deaf ears that one end of that footbridge should have a monstrous cable
Anchor, yeah,
anchor,
yeah,
just one end,
yeah,
so that when the damn thing
It'll
goes
pivot,
out,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
right properly in line with the current flow. Stays here.
yeah. All right, when that occurred, I called Steve Zaluzzi down in Brattleboro, he has a crane. And I called Bob Donald, I said, you wanna get that bridge up and out of there? And Steve Zaluzzi was only gonna charge $900 up, $900 back. And he
That's very
ripped the
reasonable.
bridge up and move it. That
That's
was just taking it up and out, moving it.
Yeah, that's very reasonable.
Putting it back, he probably would have had to come back, but $1,800 with a crane. Gravel, he said, all the rigging, everything included. Yeah. But Bob said, no. Okay. How much was that bridge? 50 grand? 25 grand?
Bunch.
Should have been a gazebo for the band. That was one of the options, remember?
Yeah,
Which we still need. Still need a gazebo in this town.
Never had, I went down by the, along the river on the town side. Right where it's else on the right, there's a bridge. Wasn't there for a little gazebo?
Want to go back 150 years, it was right here in the,
right here,
right here in the middle of the road. Yeah,
exactly, right out there in the
and
middle.
right in front of the tavern, kind of kitted quarters between the post office and the tavern. It's like a portion on the carriage.
Yeah.
There's probably a spot where they could drop people off if it was raining. Yeah. Well, that's something this town's missing is a gazebo. Send that to our town plan. Hopes are to have a gazebo someday.
You just like to say gazebo, don't you?
A gazebo.
I give you a hard time.
the most promising proposal for that would have been down at the library, and that's run hot and cold over the decades. If you go up in the band hall, there's a drawing up there made by Norris Bragg.
Right, I don't need that people.
He used to live at the
Yeah.
foot of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, over the hill. It's not the select board,
Bob
it's
Graves,
not.
right?
I don't know who's there now. But directly
And
across the river,
his wife was the town clerk.
it was
1
some
year.
called dollhouse.
Deeper.
Hmm?
Deeper, D-E.
Lee, yeah, yeah, we used to go, my dad used to go in to get the hunting license, go and shoot the shit with Norris. I remember going in there as a kid. That was the town hall,
A good friends with them all.
right, that was the town clerk's office, that was town hall.
Yeah. Well, she used to work at a hospital.
A lot.
Yeah.
She worked out of her house. Do you remember that? Oh, you weren't here.
And I do
It
know,
was the unofficial.
having a gazebo down there on library property was, opposed by a rather strong-willed library trustee for many years. So it's faced a lot of controversy. And in order to have a gazebo that's big enough to put the graphic cornet band on, and you're talking about a big structure and taking on yearly maintenance.
Mm. We like the size of the one in Weston, that's a nice band.
Well,
You ever played that one?
you haven't, no. No, I've never played it down. Well, you'd have to have one as big as the bandstand in Walpole. And that's a big. In fact, something that's probably. Forty by,
Yeah.
40 by 30 at least.
Doable,
Doable, yes. Question is it necessary? Would you better spend your money for what it might be used for something else? And well, as I said, it's debatable. We don't have that many things that one can put on community ones anymore, and then space in a kissing pond. It's just not. That's important to people these days.
if they had Wi-Fi, bus could work out of it.
Yeah, actually, I was looking outside, they said it very. Actually, things like that, even more plays or things for the kids at school.
Mhm. Well, the Nature Museum is building their timber, pavilion. That's gonna be a nice
The,
pavilion,
yeah,
that's pretty big, is that 50 by 40 maybe, or?
not sure.
That's gonna be local.
The band used to play,
Yeah.
up at the little house up here in the green.
Yeah.
You had a big crowd. See, 60, 70 people there.
Why'd they switch?
So actually a little bit better in many respects for the band, be down here at the library.
Safer with traffic maybe?
It's better for the audience. And for the band, it's adjacent to where the band hall is.
Yeah.
Up there is somewhat confined and, you've got some grade across the common that you have to deal with. It's not a big issue.
Mm.
It's easy to get in and out of down here, and we can back the band equipment trailer right up within feet of where you're actually setting the band up.
Mhm.
Don't, I would say Yeah, we prefer to be down there, it's there, but we can play it there, but it's a little more confined.
Mm. Yeah, we went there every Sunday.
Yeah, go down and take popcorn. Here to ready. I'm always a big fan.
She certainly was.
Cindy Newman took a picture of, my son, he was probably 3 or 4, in his little red wagon, we were pulling him. Our golden retriever, Duke, who was Frosty's. Oh. It's a great picture of us pulling Anthony in his wagon with the dog. It was at the band, concert. Well, anything else on this, we can circle back towards later. Um,
With Matthew coming here next,
yeah, well, yeah,
we can really. Pump in from him for information on how we deal with, murder corridors.
yeah,
Oh, I think it's,
and the other stuff,
it's pretty good.
and the data, yeah. Next
That's not a lot of good stuff in there. One thing that it mentioned, or I don't know how you actually make it happen, is flooding roads, dogwoods, sumacs, and, you know, along the road.
Yep,
At some point when. It looks like, we're gonna be talking about, river,
mitigation,
service and mitigation, so. The new owner of, the house that, Camille and, Silas, Jim Roberts sold down there. The new owner is, employed by the River Conservancy. And her, part of her mission is to talk about things like, try to increase the resilience of spring banks.
I really like those natural solutions, and it makes a nice, view on the river as well.
yeah, stream filled willows, all your dozier dogwoods, I've got them planted on my property, I've got some willows growing along the edge.
There was a bunch of planting done, down there in the floodplain area in Cambridge. That was part of the program. I think that was River Conservancy as well. And one of the newer staff members, in WRC, Margot Gia, used to work for them back when they were doing it. So she's well cued into those kinds of issues. So we can do that again.
You know, building back up behind my house, it's held very well the past few years, even through Irene. Wasn't too bad, but there's some areas that are open that if my hip wasn't killing me, I've got my willows, just do cuttings, you just do live cuttings.
Yeah, that's all it takes for this.
That's all it takes. All it would take some young people to go in there and, you know, you pay them a few bucks to go in and just plant them. You know, that's all it's gonna take. All you need to do is if you just get 10% take on 100 plants, it only takes a few plants to really grow out in a few years. And they're good rooters and hold the soil, plus when the water does hit them, they bend.
Yeah, they take a little of the energy out.
Yeah. So,
And it's already in the plan, it's just,
yeah,
you know, you're doing.
yeah,
Yeah, well,
a lot of our goals and recommendations, they're there, but
I would make it happen.
yeah,
it takes energy and
That's
money,
part of my other.
time, energy and money.
one of the nice things about having you on both select board and here is we can make plans, select board, we can make actions.
But then you have to implement them, just like everything else we've done. It's like our wastewater engineering study. Our whole study, we're not gonna do any more studies on that ever. Something. With all that effort that went into the studies.
I think we still need to, pursue, contamination issues, the PFAS,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah,
I don't know if I told you the story, but my sister and I were looking through Grafton newspapers, you know, she has a bunch of old ones. And there was one from 20 years ago about wastewater and a study being done. The story was written 20 years ago, and I could swear it was written yesterday. It could have been, it all applied. They had an engineering study, there was review, the cost was like.
yeah,
And, it was a story about the tavern being a little frustrated about the town not taking, action, so they, you know, did their own solution.
yeah, well, they're at a point where they would either have to do something or shut down, because they ran out of.
So
That's what's gonna happen to the town, if they have to find an emergency way out, so it's gonna,
Someday there's gonna be a panic in the village.
yeah, just a matter of time. And that's probably more relevant than the next flooding event we might have. You know,
Two dozen property owners, that is probably true.
And it is not a solution, but they did send out pumping notices and they got response and that is happening, so. Yeah, the homeowners are getting
yeah,
in the bill.
good, well,
That is an important step.
It is. I mean, I don't know if it's the whole solution, but it is good. It is happening.
and we need to make sure it gets followed up on,
It is.
And-
I do know that. Morgan's been
yeah,
enforcing, well, sending the letters out.
send reminders,
And
so.
she's been getting the proof that it's happening, right? They're sending the
Yeah.
updates that.
So on the Airbnbs, real quick, I made the suggestion of increasing the pumping time
Yeah,
based on occupancy and the size of the septic. We're talking about doing a little more research into, okay, who has what, and determining whether they need to be pumped out more frequently. So that's still up in the air, right? As far as that
I think so.
finalization.
It's actually the whole Airbnb regulation that being reviewed.
Yeah,
And that actually did come up at the VLCT meeting. There's a lot of towns that are looking at those Airbnb regulations. And there's actually a court case in the Supreme Court of Vermont. In, I think it's Burlington. And so there's some, I guess, waiting to see what is gonna happen in that court case and then the regulations will go forward without certain points.
okay, the next few should be fairly quick, Act 50 permit update on Lupiani. Let's see, I couldn't get in to see the information that was submitted. You need a password to get in?
I think you do. You have to sign in,
Yeah,
but. That was just his latest. Response to the ANR's. More recent denial.
yeah.
Request for information.
Did you see any of what,
No, I didn't go on there.
because I tried and I couldn't get anywhere, and what's mentioned though is Heron Lane on this.
That's in there?
What's Heron Lane?
Hiring.
Aaron,
Haran Lane.
Oh, that must be what they're calling Doug
Road
Road.
Road? We never, I never heard that, she never mentioned that, changing the name of the road.
They can't. Select board could.
It's in their permit. At least that's the heading of the, did you guys?
They
get
could
that?
have a parallel corridor.
Haran.
Yeah, that's June's brother's last name.
Oh,
Okay, so it is tied to it, is your brother's involved with
Yeah,
doing that?
yeah.
Unless maybe their little parking area off
Maybe, yeah, that's what.
Doug Road is gonna be called Heron Lane.
Maybe they've got a parallel lane or some extension.
Okay, well, that would make sense, that's kind of what I was thinking too, unless there was some other back to 50 somewhere else that they're talking about.
Yeah, as far as I know,
Well,
They
there's a
haven't got any-
little like drive that goes down out of the river, right?
well, that's Doug Road.
There's that route. Cause they were talking about parking area. Grassy parking area.
Mhm.
That's interesting. I don't remember mentioning it either.
Here we are with Google, Lester, we're trying to find that email.
Who's it, let me see, this is an email from June about?
From, here it is, Act 250 Springfield from Rebecca Bezanson. Remember. As you know, with Google, you gotta start at the bottom and work your way up. Or the,
No, there's a search on there. Oh, you mean through the.
yeah, yeah, so I asked, how do we access this to Rebecca, she didn't get back to me. And it's, she's writing to. No, I can't find June's email, really?
Good thing come to all of us, man.
I think it just came to me. Oh, come on. I just read it this morning. It was June and her brother's email to Rebecca, explaining that they submitted their changes or whatever they did to this portal or whatever for Act 250. When I clicked on it, it just took me to a password, username and password. And I messaged Rebecca, how do I access this? There's nothing. So it's called Act 250 Incomplete Letter. Heron Lane is mentioned in the verbiage. And it sounds like June is responding to what would be the next level up that was looking at this. A&R? No,
I think that their reply would have been to her office level. And she was the one that sent out the non-compliance with whatever to them, and they're responding back.
yeah,
Maybe they have to call
Land
somebody.
Land Use Review Board, District 2 Environmental Commission. Anyway, Rebecca's response back was, I just checked my records. Oh, I just checked and my records show that the incomplete letter was attached to the email. Is that what you were trying to access? Oh, she did get back to me. We're talking about something else. See,
No,
there was this email that was just hidden amongst all this other stuff here, so. In any event, is there anything more that we need to do? Because you mentioned it. Something that we may need to bring up because it was brought to us in PC. Is it something that we need to know?
I
What was
don't,
missing or?
I thought it was just informative.
There's nothing more that we need to do about this, right?
not at this point, I mean, they're really getting down into the weeds of how things were described, a discrepancy between how things were being described in the application. And how we can resolve
Found it.
good.
Yeah, you gotta keep clicking, they just keep getting buried in deeper and deeper, and you gotta click back out. Hi, Rebecca and Quinn. This is from June, per instruction of the incomplete letter. as of 1 p.m. April 3rd. The requested exhibits are uploaded to anr.vermont.gov in a folder called Act 250 Land Use Permit Application 2W1391 Heron Lane Properties. Okay, Heron Lane Properties.
Oh, that may just be their name.
Okay, I missed the properties, Heron Lane Properties. The requested application updates have been made as well, thank you. And then, that's where I messaged Rebecca. Since I was in this email loop. How do we access the attachment? And then she has to ask me, what are you referring to? It's like, well. And, well, here's the letter. Oh, we're finding more and more here. Oh, we look, Lester,
You know, with your phone, it's here.
it's 5 pages, I don't wanna read it.
There was also notice today, Act 250, that the cheese company, Act 250 permit had been approved.
This,
Came today in today's email.
I didn't get that,
True.
unless it. This letter was dated February 20th, 25. Maybe this is the initial, but they've got highlighted here, please complete the stormwater construction permit determination form. That's one thing that's highlighted. Something about historic sites. Link provides instructions on how to initiate consultation with DHP. Division of Historic. What's DHP?
If you're guessing it being historic, it's probably correct.
This gets complicated. Okay. So, I didn't do anything more with it?
Not now, I mean. We're just spectators to it, unless we
Yeah,
happen to see something that. You know, is way out of bounds in terms of what we'd expect to have happen down there. I don't expect that, the hand are quibbling over things that were, as I said, really down in the weeds and had to do with inconsistency between what they had put on a map drawing and what they had described.
yeah, so I found your embedded email, this may be of interest since June gave us an informational presentation for proposed project, that's why I added it here. And there's the complete letter. Oh, hope she, gets it, right?
Yeah,
And, anything we can do to support her, I guess. All right, put my emails away, Lester. And municipal planning grant, I mentioned, Matthew Bachler,
but,
and I guess I gotta go back to my emails. And he indicates that he will be glad to join us. So the Department of Housing and Community Development will be announcing the next municipal planning grant funding round this summer. He also says, I wanted to ask about scheduling a time to meet us for municipal consultation. And they're required at least 2 years, 2 of the 8 years for each town plan to come and meet. So the consultations are informal and it's mostly a chance to talk about how your planning efforts are going and how we can be of assistance. And, wanted to know when our next meeting was, I just said. Other than tonight, our next one will be the 13th of May, and he indicated yes. Glad to attend. So we'll put him on top of our agenda next.
Yes, please do.
And, municipal planning grant, he said we'll work on. The next round, which the deadline is November 1st, I believe he said. So definitely get in on that, so we have money for next year, right?
Yep,
Jim's gonna be here tonight.
May 13th, yeah. Okay. The old business, down, no, the, sound system, anything more on that? No,
You guys were gonna look for the equipment here. That was the last thing that they were gonna.
it's not, I don't know where it is.
So the last thing we left off with is that we wanted to make what we said louder, and then this will
Yeah.
pick it up, so. That's not new technology there, that's basically just getting a karaoke machine and.
Yeah. We talked about the last meeting, hanging something from here to pick up everybody that would amplify it for this. So
Did,
you need a speaker somewhere in here.
someone said that there would have been in days gone by.
Yeah.
And they thought they would be able to locate it in some storage nook.
We couldn't find it back here.
We looked over here.
But, you and I looked a little bit,
Yeah, I looked on this side, I didn't look in the back.
Yeah. There was just the couple of mics that they were using for the last town hall meeting, but they're not the same. I'm wondering, since Brian Chase had bought those for us when we were doing the wind, meetings over at the school,
I don't know who Brian Chase is, but
he had bought the house, next house down from Joe Lane. He was there for several
probably,
years. Like I did a lot of landscape stonework there for him. Under the curve, across from,
yeah, around the bend
yeah,
place.
anyway, he was there for many years and he was coming to our meetings. And didn't like the sound, so he purchased like, 5 or 7 mics. And a speaker, and it was working great. Cause there, anyone who was speaking, plus there was a mic out in the audience that people could go to. And it was amplifying beautifully.
Ron,
So,
I'm
I don't think we need anything that elaborate, but if it's still available, we should try to use it. But I think maybe he took it back
I don't
when
think,
he left.
I don't think so. Has anyone asked Ken where it may be?
No,
That would be one thing. And the other is that it might possibly be in storage over at the school.
This is worth, I mean, if you think Kim is worth asking, I'll be happy to follow up.
that's exactly where it would be, because in the back room where the chairs and tables go, because it was always used over there.
That's right.
It's probably tucked in the back.
And it also had been used here.
I don't remember it being used here.
Oh, yeah, and microphones with a little red band on them, yeah, it was used here.
Used to be on it.
No,
Should we run it by Morgan to?
Morgan might know, but, and go to Ken first.
I'll follow up with Kim and.
Okay,
So what I'm really looking for is just just to make sure I'm explaining, that somewhere along the line, some years ago, we had mics and an amplifier.
yeah,
We're looking for that.
there were mics about this tall. On their own stand,
Yep.
and it had a red light when you were speaking. And you could adjust your volume on each mic, I believe.
And the mics are wired mics, and.
Wired mics,
It
yeah.
went right to a little amp, and the amp sat, was
Yeah.
it 1 amp? And it was basically
I
one.
think it was just 1 amp.
One.
I don't think they were,
Was it wireless?
I think it was wireless.
Anyway, so then first we'll start with finding the equipment, so we'll find what, how it was working, but, that's it, okay, I'll follow up with Kim.
And I would still contend that this would probably work if you had what is effectively, an equalizer. If you're running a band and you wanted to, balance the bass and the treble, your microphone can run through this little gadget with sliding potentiometer line. You could boost the bass or you can boost the treble. This needs a boost in the treble and a knockdown in the bass. And that would make so much of a difference in intelligibility of speech here. Because I don't care if it's, if you get to the point where people say, well, your voice sounded tinny. Yeah, okay, but you could understand what I was saying. It needs a treble boost. And it
And you
should be pretty simple to do.
By the way, and again, I'll look to see if there's an owner's manual for that, but you don't believe that that a contraption like this, I mean, everything, if your car radio has.
Yeah.
That basing treble adjustment, you don't think this thing would too?
It may
Somewhere.
not by itself, it might be an accessory, or it might be something you'd have to do as an accessory program in the computer.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be something in your computer probably. But
Should be able to boost the treble.
no time like the present. What's it? If there's no time like the present.
So the fellow's name was Case, not Chase. Brian Case, C-A-S-E.
CSC, what's his first name?
Brian,
You know, could you, just throw me a pen, any pen there, or a busted.
the Brian Case, and it was the microphone system that we used at school during the,
I remember his involvement. He was actually on all of the subcommittees in the wind debate.
yes, because he was representing the non-residents, wasn't he?
I don't know who he was representing, but I know he brought that up to the situation and that kind of thing.
Well, one of the things he got fed up at first was the sound system, and he bought it for us, which was awfully nice.
Yes,
I know a little bit, I know he played hockey, when we had our pond hockey tournament, he and his boys came down and played. But as soon as we got to know him a little bit, he left town. Any other old business? New business? Open meeting law first?
okay, at some point, in open meeting law, training is available Wednesday, 16th of April, 10 a.m. webinar from VLCT. And to get into it, to register, look up town administrator's email of Monday, the 7th of April at 10:35 in the morning.
Yeah.
And what you'll find when you try to register is you'll be asked for a username and password, which you have to go through and set up with VLCT. That's worthwhile doing because it basically gets you in that portal. All other kinds of things that VLCT offers.
So even if we just, like, I can't make it, but should I just register anyway?
Yeah, I think, there's a recorded version of it that you can access.
There's other things on that site, I need stuff.
Oh, very
It's
much.
both registered. And then they do have a lot of, like ongoing training. And, you do have to, they'll have you put it in a checkup. But it's
Yeah,
zero
that's-
cost,
It's really,
so,
pretty open.
yeah, so you have to put it in a
Zero cost.
shopping cart.
Yeah,
And then you buy it for no dollars,
yeah.
and then it's on your. And then it notifies Kevin.
And,
Alright,
and we are both members of the PACIF, which is the insurance program, and we're a member of VLCT.
Yeah, it has standard settings for Zoom. And it knows it's an owl, but it doesn't give you any owl settings. But assume there's probably a little program you'd have to load
Maybe so.
to access any specific settings for it. Which I don't assume is.
Well, thank you for checking.
also on April 16th at 6 P.M. It's water well guidance for homeowners. It's training. Did you get that one?
The National Water Model, is that? You said Water World?
No, water well guidance for homeowners.
Water World.
Global go to training,
No, I didn't.
it might be part of that.
Subcommittee that you were
Yeah,
formerly in from the select board.
no,
And,
no. Yes, I forgot how I got this. It's at 6 P.M., so I'm thinking of,
you probably got it
Yes.
because you're town health officer.
that's why. That's why, but it sounded interesting for maybe all of us. And
What day is that?
Send to her.
it's,
Have we got that now?
Oh, I have to look at the schedule, that's right.
let me go to this. Forward it to you guys.
I'm doing the risk management.
Let's
training.
come back later.
Be interesting.
I just clicked on it, just come back later. But I'll send it to you guys. It's got the link here.
VLCT does a really good job of explaining open meeting law. We had a session over here in the school about 10 years ago. That was a real eye opener. They had two of their lawyers there to give the presentation. And it was crystal clear. They're really on their game with that particular topic.
What was it? Morgan too, I don't know if she got it. She must get it,
Which one?
this one for town health officer.
Probably not. Sort of thing she ought to blast out to. Certainly the select board and maybe that regular group of people who like to listen to select board meetings.
Mhm. Yep. It's put FYI, Morgan.
Charles Ballman, for instance, would
Yeah.
probably like to hear it.
Okay. Oh, shoot. It says, I just clicked on the link that we need to go to for the meeting. But it at least tells you it's the global go to training. Program. Oh. Forward Morse. It definitely came from my town health officer training. We talked about rain gauges, is it something that we wanna take on as a project going forward? And
One way or another, yeah, and,
come up with a plan.
I need to know more about this Tempest program and, I might actually reach out to, that Transcendent Engineering that runs the River Aware app. Find out where they get their sensor information.
Mhm.
Get a little bit more. Clued
Well,
in.
we'll add this as a agenda item next meeting, or maybe in June.
Yeah,
I can add it next meeting, and if we don't,
yeah,
Complete it, we can add it.
if Matthew's still here, sure, he'd be interested in,
oh yeah, good point,
hearing about it.
yep.
Because it's also a topic that Chris Campany is keenly,
Yes. Yeah, I think Chris would be all over this idea.
he has, relatives that have been hammered this year,
North Carolina, okay, so, let's see, any other new business, the ash borer,
Yeah, I was gonna just mention, Morgan had sent a video out on March 24th on an email. It was from the Vermont Urban and Community Forest Program. They also do grants that, Morgan's gonna be working on. You know, Al Sands had reported that he
Yeah.
spotted it, on his woodlot. So we're gonna use that as the basis for the grant application. I watched the video, it's pretty interesting. You know, and I've heard about this through fire department training as well, that, you know, it's almost inevitable, you know, once it's in a location. You know, it spreads by firewood generally, being, you know, moved between locations. And Vermont's forest, 7% are ash. And, so it's gonna be an impact, along the highways, you know, for the highway department with dead trees.
Yeah.
I had a meeting with the village park, volunteers because I'm on the park committee for the subboard. And they have a concern on it, with the village park and safety and, you know, it's gonna be a long-term problem over the next, you know, 10 to 20 years. It takes a while for the trees to, die, but once they're infected, they will. And then, you know, they actually will fall. So I just think it's something to be aware of. I'd watched the video, it's actually pretty interesting. And then, like I said, Morgan's already applying for the grant that you can do some things. To try to control it. Alan recommended, some training. You know, logging training, it's a safety program.
yeah, dropping dead trees.
Yeah, and, most of the highway departments already had it, but
Yeah,
it's probably won't be bad to.
Game of blogging,
Yeah, right, it had been done in the past with the highway department, and the fire department,
yes.
so he recommended maybe doing a no cost grant again for them. So I was gonna talk to Rob, and I already brought it up last night and stuff.
Is that why Peg had you over, Matt, some years ago, was that the she was afraid of the ash borer and
Mhm.
that was another?
Yeah.
And they hadn't come yet to Grafton, is that?
Yeah, well, you've got that beautiful ash that you need to protect,
One got, we've been giving it injection.
yeah, give it the injections, yeah, the injections are good. Out in the forest, they're saying. There's some ash that may be resistant, so don't take down all your ash yet, unless you know they're gone. Cause some of the resistant ash will help, provide that resiliency to the new offspring.
We didn't talk about that, I got the impression it wasn't generally that ash around here, or not as much. You talking about it?
Yeah. There's some truth to that throughout, where there's certain ash that aren't being affected by the
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does go through, some of the signs, you'll start seeing.
yeah, but there's also, ash dieback. There's a, I'm not sure what the botanic, the Latin for the. Pathogen is, but it's, just without the borer, or the emerald ash borer there, ash are just declining in general. You've seen it not just here in Vermont, but even go over to New Hampshire and all the old ash along the roads they're just collapsing.
Yeah.
I was talking to a forester in Maine. He was, in the forestry department up in Maine. We were just talking about this last week. And he said, yeah, the ash are just declining in general. And, yeah, the ash borer might take advantage of the tree that's in stress. So the trees that are either a resilient to the disease or resilient, form a resiliency to the ash borer, allow them to mature and drop seed, because those seed could be the next regeneration of ash that, would be, resistant to the ash borer. Eventually, the ash borer is just gonna eat its way out of existence.
But I found, you know, it might be something we add to the town plan for.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's also, you know, the spotted lanternfly, it's gonna be a problem, starting to move north. That's following, mostly railroad tracks. Following the trains with, maybe, you know, pallets or soft lumber.
Yeah.
Coming up from down south. Traveling north.
So the ash borer probably came to the US through wood pallets or something.
Yeah, it started out in Chicago, in the Illinois area.
Yeah.
And it's worked its way this way.
Yeah, it said Detroit, or was it Detroit? It was one of those cities that had
Chicago.
about 10 years.
They've actually with the injections and management, they don't have any, ash borer anymore. Issues, so it has been controlled out there. I was talking to Al about that a few years ago. Yeah, I looked at your trees, and I also looked at the one for, Dottie Cannon, one was right next to her house. I said, that thing's like a foot from the house. It's about, you can't put your arm around it. I said, Dottie, you gotta get an arborist in here, I'm not gonna do anything, I'm not gonna inject this tree. So I suggested Arbor Klein, who does Rick Boswell's trees. So his ash are being treated right next door here. So there is control, but you're not gonna go down the side of the roads injecting crap trees to begin with.
As a town, your risk management has, you got a big risk. If it becomes really widespread in town. And you get trees that are infected long enough that they start losing their structural integrity.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Then removing the trees becomes very expensive.
And you'd be very careful.
I had a couple of trees in my yard, but I'm just gonna cut them down, just maples.
Yeah, I got a couple big ones on my property that I'm, there's one that I'm thinking of injecting. Nice tree. Those, yours are beautiful, those are amazing.
We took down the one that was, there was one that was ailing, the one that was closest to the house.
I don't just go with it.
Was that?
Well, Lester had some that you couldn't put your
Yeah,
arm
the
around.
one on the other side.
I think we measured it, did we measure it to like 20 foot?
It's
Wow.
huge, it's
Those are
beautiful,
nice to see.
it's just so gorgeous, and it's still so healthy.
Yeah, the big one, so the big one's still there.
They're both big, they're both pretty huge, but the bigger one is still there, the bigger one is doing great. But the other one we took down last year. It was really not doing well.
And you're injecting it,
The big one that's doing well, we're injecting, yeah.
who's doing it for you? Did you call Arbor Klein? I told her to call Arbor Klein.
Whatever she's doing whatever you told her, but I don't know.
Yeah,
And if I like, she's responsible for the things going south outside the house, and I'm responsible for things deteriorating inside the house.
Thanks. Well, for the update on that, the others certainly add that to the list. And there's, so we got the spotted lanternfly, something we gotta watch for too. It's
Yes.
going after, grapes and viney things. It'd be nice if it ate bittersweet. It's going after tree of heaven, which is a kind of a brushy thing that you see along the railroad tracks a little further south. So it's eating those things up.
Well, eat kudzu,
Yeah. But the problem is it's getting into vineyards and they're also getting into apple orchards and fruit orchards and most fruit tree orchards.
Is it a vine that grows on top of other stuff? Is that?
No, it's an insect.
It's an insect.
Yeah, it's a spotted lanternfly. It's actually a beautiful insect. It opens up its wings, white and black with red spots on its wings. It's a spectacular insect. And there's also the, get the, ash borer, which you also get the Asian, look it up, my mind is fried. This one affects maples, which may be more of a concern for us because maples are our. Mine's fried.
Let's go, we can come back to it.
Yeah,
I gotta head out.
so there was the emerald ash borer and this other Asian. Longhorn Asian beetle. Okay. Asian longhorn, there we go. Asian longhorn beetle. And there's some other beetles that look a little like them, but the Asian longhorn has these extraordinary long antennae. With white dots on them. And it's one other feature that identifies them to these others that you might see. I find the other ones occasionally go off, Asian longhorn beetle, Asian longhorn beetle. And it's not, I've actually sent a couple to, I took pictures and sent them to UVM. And they said, no, that's not Asian longhorn. That's one that affects maples. Sugar maples. So, all kinds of fun things. Yeah, anything else? New business, we're good? Public comment? No, we better have any good public comment, tired. Next meeting's 13th. You guys have any other things to throw on the agenda?
we don't wanna stay till 11 o'clock.
No. But we can, right, we can put something together that lasts for 2 hours and. Thank you.